Hey there, welcome to episode 201 of Mike's Collection. I'm Mike, and the part of my collection that I'm going to be talking about today is my new G.I. Joe classified figures. Now, some of these figures I've actually been accumulating over several months, so they're not like brand new. Some of them are quite new, but some of them I've had for a couple of weeks, some for a couple of months even. So I think I've got 9 figures in total that I'm going to go over in this video. And I've actually already shot the middle section of this video where I take all the figures out and show you them close up. And I went longer than I wanted to go. I usually try and keep these videos under an hour, but I went long. So for that reason, I'm going to keep this introduction very short, and I'm going to dive right into the reviews. So hope you enjoy them. So the first figure we're going to take a look at is Roadblock. Now, depending on how particular you are, you could call this either Roadblock version 3 or version 4 in the classified line. And that's quite a lot of versions for a toy line that's only been around for such a short period of time. Like in the original vintage toy line, we did have a few Roadblocks, I want to say 5 or 6, but that was over the course of about 12 years or so. Whereas this toy line's only been going for about 2.5 years. So a lot of Roadblocks. So version 1 of Roadblock came out in the very first wave of figures. And here is that Roadblock. So you'll see these guys are quite a bit different, but they do share some similarities. Now a lot of people didn't like this Roadblock for a variety of reasons. I didn't mind it. But anyway, the next version of Roadblock that came out was this same figure, just slightly recolored. They did some changes, like all this gold and stuff on his shins. They released a darker version, so I think that was painted black. I think maybe some of the red on his gloves was changed to a darker color too, because some of the early criticisms were that the classified figures were too bright and too blingy. So they released all of the original figures, Scarlet, Duke, Snake Eyes, and Roadblock here, with a slightly different paint job. And then we got another version that was a Target exclusive a short time later, which is this one, which is a pretty radical new look for Roadblock with the sunglasses and the bandana and the big beard. You know, that's not based on any prior, media or anything we'd seen. So then we had those Roadblocks. And then they announced this guy. And he was an Amazon exclusive, and he sold out very quickly on Amazon. And he was actually, I believe he was selling for more than the standard price. He was a little bit more expensive than some of the other figures. And again, for me, if I was to have one Roadblock in my collection, this is the one I would have wanted. However, since it sold out so quickly on Amazon, and he was a little bit more expensive, I would have had to turn to the secondary market like eBay and pay even more for him. Because he's not a favorite character of mine, and because I did already have a Roadblock in my collection, so at least the character was represented, I thought, you know what, I'm not going to put in a lot of time and effort to try and chase this figure down and pay a whole lot of money for him. But a couple of months ago, I saw somebody selling him on Facebook for a pretty reasonable price, and so I scooped him up. I made Buddy an offer, and he sold him to me. So I've had this Roadblock now for a couple of months. He's been sitting in a pile of toys on the floor waiting for me to review. And so he's not exactly a new figure. Probably a lot of people got this figure back in 2021, but he is new to me. And I don't know, your thoughts might vary on who you think the better Roadblock is. Maybe objectively, this guy's cooler with the beard and everything. I don't know. But for me, I've been collecting G.I. Joe since the launch of the Real American Hero toy line back in 1982. And when the first Roadblock figure came out, this is what he looked like. So you can see he had that green camo tank top and the brown pants, the green helmet, the mustache, not a beard. And this is how I pictured Roadblock. This is always going to be how I see Roadblock in my head, even though that he has gone through a couple of different versions. So as I mentioned, even in the vintage toy line, he did get a couple of different versions. So here is Roadblock version 2. So you can see he still has the mustache, but now instead of the tank top, he's got this green and red vest with kind of padded shoulders, and different color pants, all that sort of stuff. No helmet anymore. So this was a pretty cool figure as well, but this is still the Roadblock I prefer. So anyway, it seemed a little strange that when the classified line first launched, they went with this Roadblock, which I would say is an update of this one, with the green jacket, with the red shoulder pad, and all that sort of stuff. So, at least it was a version of Roadblock that was, based on a vintage figure and all that stuff. But I just don't know why they would have went with version 2. It's much less iconic. The version 1 look is what he wore in the cartoons and all that sort of stuff. So anyway, that Roadblock was fine. This Roadblock, like I've said earlier, it's a cool figure, but it's not based on anything that has come before. But this one here, the Amazon Roadblock, this is based on this vintage guy. And yeah, I think this is probably the best Roadblock figure we've ever gotten. And we've gotten a lot of them over the years. So just look at the detail on that face. He looks angry. And even the vintage Roadblock didn't look particularly angry. He looks pretty relaxed there. But the artwork on the vintage card had a very kind of angry looking Roadblock as he was charging forward. And so even more so than the vintage toy, this figure here reminds me of the vintage card art with that kind of angry scowl on his face. Now the helmet's really nice. It's much more detailed with all kinds of different sculpting on there than the vintage one, which again was very simple. And but yeah, you can pop this off. And I don't know if I like him better with or without it. I'm pretty used to him not wearing a helmet because he didn't really wear one in the cartoon. And where the version 2 figure didn't even have a helmet. I think I often removed the helmet from my version 1 figure when I used to play with him as a kid, so he looked more like the cartoon. But yeah, so he's got this tank top. You can see there's like a texture in the tank top. It's painted that camo green. Not an exact reproduction color-wise to the vintage one. Same as the pants. He's got the brown pants. It's not an exact color. But again, I don't think it needs to be. I don't need these figures to be exactly the same as the ones I had as a kid, because then it's almost like, what's the point? I like these figures to, reference the ones I had as a kid, but I like them to add a little bit something new. So you see, this guy's got a big, huge machine gun. This is actually the same gun that came on the Ram motorcycle. It attached to the side of the motorcycle, but now this version is just a handheld version. And I think this is another thing that a lot of fans were happy about, not just this new deco, but this original Roadblock had a very science fiction-y looking gun, as you can see. And then even the Target exclusive one had the same gun, just painted maybe a little bit better. But yeah, this one here, now this looks like an actual real-world military gun. Still a pretty crazy gun for a guy to be just toting around. But yeah, Roadblock was the heavy machine gunner, so it makes sense that he would have a heavy machine gun. You see he's also got a little green pistol here that's holstered on his leg. And I think that was it for accessories. So yeah, I'm not going to get into the articulation and all that stuff because, the articulation on these figures, it's all pretty much the same. You see the double jointed elbows and double jointed knees, so they've got a really good range of movement. They've got kind of drop down legs in the hips, which allows for some, I don't know if you can see that, but it allows for some extra movement in the hips and everything. So yeah, they move really well, so I'm not going to bother covering that with all these figures. But anyway, yeah, this guy is really solid. Now, before I move on, I actually did drag out a whole bunch of Roadblock figures I was going to bring out here for comparison, so I might as well do that. So again, you already saw the original. When they moved on to the what we call the modern era, or the Generation 3 G.I. Joes in 2007, this was the first Roadblock that they put out. So again, you can see how this one is based on that original Real American Hero figure, and again, how the look carries through to this figure here. Of all the Roadblocks I had up until this new one, some of my favorites were this one here from the G.I. Joe Collectors Club, which is Roadblock in his Tiger Force colors, which I always really liked this look. The vintage Tiger Force Roadblock was just the same version 1 figure, just repainted in this deco. And so yeah, we got it in the modern line, and I'm imagining we're probably going to get this figure painted in these colors at some point in the near future, because they're already releasing Tiger Force repaints. And then more recently we got this 4-inch Roadblock in the retro line. I quite like this one too, although again, he's got the full beard, which is not my preferred look. I like him better just as a little mustache. So yeah, lots of Roadblocks. And this doesn't even touch on I have a whole bunch of Roadblock figures that are all sculpted to look like Dwayne Johnson from when he played him in the live-action movies. So yeah, a fun character. I have a ton of them. This is probably the best Roadblock I have in my collection. I would like to say that's the last one I need. However, when they do eventually redeco it in the Tiger Force colors, I'll definitely be picking him up. So yeah, very cool. I'm happy that I was able to finally grab this guy. So the next figure I want to show you is the Cobra Trooper, or sometimes they're referred to as blue shirts. These are the basic Cobra Infantry Troopers. And these guys have been around since the earliest days, back in 1982. Now, I do have a couple of the vintage troopers, and here is one of them. So you can see the outfit is still pretty standard. It's that kind of like that dark navy blue with the red Cobra symbol, the blue helmet, and then the black mask over his mouth and nose. Now, my Cobra Trooper is actually in pretty good shape. His emblem is still intact, his thumbs are still on there, his crotch isn't snapped off. Those are all the obvious things that go on G.I. Joes. However, the first thing that goes on most G.I. Joes is the elastic washer that holds them together, and sure enough, the elastic washer in this Cobra Trooper has broken. So he is just kind of resting in place there. So I have to be delicate when I handle him. Here I have the Cobra Officer. So this guy was also released in 1982. He is still in one piece, but I don't know for how much longer. Every time I go into my vintage G.I. Joes, more and more of them are broken, and this guy feels pretty loose. So you can see how similar the Officer and the Troopers are. One thing that might not be obvious is these guys had a silver Cobra emblem instead of a red one, and you can see that is completely worn off. Some other changes of note is you can see the web gear where the Trooper just has those two straps that kind of come down the front, whereas the Officer has got like multiple straps and pouches and stuff, and also on the helmet. This was painted silver at one point as well, but he's got that little kind of triangular emblem on there to identify him as an officer. So this is the standard Cobra Army, the Troopers and the Officers, and I love these guys. We've had them in every version of G.I. Joe that has come out since. I've got dozens of them in the modern style. I've got lots of them in the vintage style, and I've got some in the early 2000s, what we would call, I guess, Generation 2 or the New Sculpt era. Anyway, I was pretty annoyed with the G.I. Joe Classified line when they first announced that the Cobra Trooper was going to be a Target exclusive figure. Because I'm in Canada, we don't have Targets in Canada. Some of those Target exclusives sometimes show up at Toys R Us, which we still do have in Canada, but they don't show up in very large numbers. Any of those Target exclusives are very hard to get a hold of unless I go to the secondary market. So the first Cobra Trooper came out, and it was only available through Target. I tried to get them, no luck. I didn't want to pay the crazy prices that people were asking on the secondary market, so I waited. And fortunately, it wasn't long before Hasbro announced they were going to do a second version of the Cobra Trooper, which is this guy here, and you can see I have bought 3 of him. So this is all the exact same identical figure, and because with these guys, it's fun to kind of build a little squad of them. So I thought 3 was a nice, reasonable number. I don't have a whole lot of space, so I thought this was enough. But they look pretty cool together. And you can see they come with a bunch of different weapons, so you can display them a little bit differently with each one. And so I was happy to have a little squad of troopers. However, I was still annoyed that it seemed like I was never going to get that Target exclusive one, because there wasn't a ton of differences, but there was enough to annoy me that I didn't have it. Anyway, I did finally get the Cobra Island Target exclusive Cobra Trooper. I bought him on Facebook from the same guy that sold me that Roadblock. And so here he is. After a long time, and I really thought I wouldn't get him. And I wasn't as busted up about it as I was initially, because I do have these other troopers, and I'm sure they're probably going to repaint this figure a bunch of different ways before this line eventually ends. I'm probably going to have like 12 different varieties of this figure. But I did want this one, and you can kind of see the obvious reason is he's got those snake-eyed goggles right on the front. That's probably the biggest difference. Now, they are removable. You don't have to display him with them, in which case he would look a lot more like these other 3. But yeah, as far as accessories go, he had those goggles, which I'll show you in a little more detail in a second. And then he also had this little strap on his arm, which I don't know if I have it displayed right side up or if it should be facing the other way. And I don't know exactly what it's supposed to signify, if he's some sort of higher rank than maybe these guys are. Because he's not an officer, because as we established earlier, the officers usually have silver emblems and they have a little triangle on their hat. So yeah, I'm not sure what this signifies. But anyway, he came with it. And so yeah, the goggles and the patch. That's kind of what really made this figure something desirable to me. However, now that I have him in hand, I do see that there are quite a bit more differences. I knew there was some paint differences, but it wasn't as obvious to me until I had them both in hand. So you see, this guy here is a two-tone blue. Like, his boots are a darker blue, his knee pads are blue, his vest is blue, his shoulders, everything is blue on blue. Where all that stuff is black on this figure. Black boots, black knee pads, black gauntlets, black shoulder pads, black vest. So it is quite a bit different. Again, that little thing on the helmet, black on this guy's, blue on this guy's. So yeah, I'm definitely glad that I found this guy, because he is different enough from my little squad there that he does feel like, I don't know, a squad leader. Whether or not he's an officer, I don't know. But anyway, you can take his helmet off. All these guys' helmets come off. And the goggles, you can put them up on his head like that. They come off completely if you don't want to use them. But I really like the way they look. I think they're pretty creepy when you put them down over his eyes. This thing here is also removable. You just kind of slide it off of his arm. So, you can choose to display him with that if you want to or not. But anyway, I think he's really cool. And I'm glad to expand my line of Cobra Troopers. Now, the next figure I want to show you is the recently released Cobra Officer. So this guy was announced a couple of months after these guys had come out. And, that was no surprise. Like, of course, they're going to repaint this guy with a silver Cobra emblem and call him an officer. Like, we all knew that was going to happen. However, the officer is actually quite a bit more than that. He's actually really cool. So you can see right off the bat, silver Cobra emblem. He's got the little silver triangle on his head. But he is not, the same figure repainted. So let me just shimmy him out of the way for a second. We'll bring this guy back in. So you can see the helmets are different. The heads are different. Like, this guy's mask is, I'm talking about his like balaclava kind of mask there. It's very busy. It's kind of, looks like it's got a breather. Like there's some maybe technology or something associated with it. Whereas this guy's mask just looks to be, like a standard cloth mask pulled up over his face, which is much truer to the vintage figures. Also with the chest, like he's got the straps, and again, it's much closer to, let me get that vintage officer again. So you notice the multiple straps and these multiple pouches, like the configuration is very similar to the vintage figure, whereas the Cobra Trooper's vest did not really match up with the vintage, configuration. Beyond that, I'm not sure. I haven't really examined this figure all that closely. But as I'm looking at them really kind of for the first time now, comparisons, like, yeah, their boots are different. Again, I feel the officer has a more traditional boot, where this guy has the armored Shin Guard. Their knees, looks like the same knee pad. The pants, I think they're different. It's hard to see. It's hard to tell, because this guy's got the, that's sculpted. You see the two-tone where it goes from one blue to another, and there's like a seam. I don't see the seam on this guy's leg. Or yeah, I do. Okay, it is there. So yeah, I think the same pants. Same arms, by the looks of it. At least the upper arms. Again, this guy's got armored gauntlets. This guy does not. He's got a more traditional, just like long black glove. And then, of course, their weapons are different as well. This guy's got a little pistol that can be holstered there. Another gun here. He's got like a shotgun, I think it is, kind of tucked on the back there with his holster. And then he's got a knife sheathed on his leg. Very cool. The Cobra emblem, like this is raised and sculpted. It's really cool. So now I have a really nice little squad of these guys with 3 basic troopers, 1, I don't know, troop leader we'll call him, and then an officer that even outranks him. So yeah, it's a pretty cool little squad. I'm quite happy with these figures. I think Hasbro could have cheaped out and just painted this guy with a silver emblem, maybe gave him a new helmet with the V, and fans would have gobbled them up. But they did much better and gave us a unique figure. So, right on, Hasbro. So next up, we're going to take a look at another Cobra Trooper type. So after the initial Cobra Trooper and Cobra Officer, the G.I. Joe line kept introducing more and more specialized versions of Cobra Troopers, and most of them are called the Vipers. Initially, we got the Cobra Viper, which is, again, kind of just standard infantry, maybe a little more well-armored than the standard blue shirt. But then we got Night Vipers and Heat Vipers, and this guy here, the Alley Viper, which is the kind of urban assault Cobra Trooper. And the original one of these guys came out in 1989, which is actually pretty late for my toy collecting, because I was collecting G.I. Joes right from 82, but the last figure I bought was a 1990 figure. And after that, I just stopped collecting and playing with G.I. Joes. So this guy came pretty late in my toy collecting or toy playing career, whatever you want to call it. Pretty late into my childhood, I suppose is the better way to put it. And yet he made a big impact on me. I love this guy. If you asked me who my favorite Cobra Troopers were, this guy would always be in my top 5. I also love the Heat Viper and the Ice Viper. Those were guys that also came out kind of late in the line, but they just made a big splash, and I love them. So this guy here, I've got the original, and here he is. But sadly, whoops, as you can see, he's in the same state as my Cobra Officer, in that little plastic elastic that you can see snapped in there, so then he just kind of falls to pieces after that. But yeah, so here's the original one, and he looks great. It was such a unique design. He had this cool face shield that flopped down over his face, and he had this big, crazy shaped shield too as well. And then he had this backpack with this gun. Now, oddly enough, this gun wasn't removable. It's kind of molded right into his backpack. And yet this little grappling hook that plugs into the back of it, that was removable. Anyway, and then he had a pretty cool, unique gun as well. I always thought it was kind of weird looking how it looked kind of stubby. But anyway, love this guy. And we got lots of different Alley Vipers over the years. They would release them in all kinds of different colors. And then they even kind of changed up the design. But nothing beat the original. I loved that orange and blue, even though it might not have made any sense for somebody, trying to, camouflage themselves in the city. It seemed a little crazy, but I loved it. And then when we got some updates of the Alley Viper in the modern era, again, we got lots of different repaints and stuff, but the one that I brought out to show you is this one here. So this is the first 4-inch Alley Viper we got, and he's clearly modeled after the original 89 figure, so he's still got that shield. You'll notice here his gun is the gun with the grappling hook that was kind of sculpted into his backpack in the original figure, but this one here you can actually take it off of the backpack, so that's pretty cool. And another new feature here is you can actually take his whole helmet off, so it's not just the shield that flips down, but you can still put that down if you want to, and yeah, very cool. So I love the look of this guy. And I was kind of surprised that we were getting an updated Alley Viper so early in the classified line, because as I mentioned, he's a 1989 figure. And I think the classified line is largely kind of going for nostalgia. So it's going to be based on a lot of the characters from the cartoon. And those were mostly characters from the early years of G.I. Joe. Alley Viper is kind of a late released character. So I'm surprised that he got, this much attention in the classified line. But I'm not at all disappointed. I'm very happy to have him here. And we knew he was coming. So I'm not surprised when I finally saw this figure announced. I was surprised when the first wave of G.I. Joe classified figures came out and they showed the Alley Viper in the artwork on the back of the package, because the artwork kind of teased figures that were coming out in the next couple of waves. So we did know right from the get-go that this Alley Viper was very likely to be coming out. But yeah, I think they really nailed him. I love the look of that face. Those eyes, the paint on those is really well done. I like the wrinkles in his mask. Now, I do find the shield a little flimsy. The plastic is really thin. So it works well enough. It folds down. I'll probably display him with it up. I really like that look, but yeah, it does slide down. But I found the little pegs that hold it on, they can kind of slip off kind of easily. So he's got a knife sheathed in his vest, and that comes right back from the vintage figure. He had a little sculpted knife that you couldn't actually remove from his chest, but this one here you can. So the knife, comes out. I've got it sheathed in there. He's also got a pistol holstered on his leg here, so that's removable from the holster. Then he has the same kind of stubby little gun that the vintage figure had. And the backpack, he's got the gun. It is removable, so you can take this right off of the backpack, like so. And it's got that little, mine's a little dusty because he's been laying on the floor, but he's got the little grappling hook type of thing in the end of it. Yeah, so very cool. I like this guy a lot. One thing I did find kind of odd, and I don't know if this is a mistake, but I find these Shin Guards, they're lined up kind of oddly, because you can turn his legs, like there's a swivel there and at the boot, but like this foot's not so bad. It kind of lines up with the front of his foot, but this one here, it just it doesn't really line up with how his foot faces forward. So I don't know if that was maybe glued on in the wrong spot or something, but it's misaligned on that guy, and I think it looks a little weird. But anyway, what can you do? That aside, I love all the little details. Like I love the kind of checkered pattern in his knee pads there. Again, all these classified figures do a nice job of adding some texture to the clothing and stuff. You can see these. These might be the same parts that they've used for the Cobra Troopers or maybe even Duke or something. So maybe that's why you see the similar textures on all the figures. But I really love it. It makes it look like it's real material. And then just all kinds of nice sculpting and paint job on the vest. Little Cobra emblem painted in there and everything. Which again, that's just a little detail right from the vintage figure, but you can see they just had it sculpted on the blue there. It wasn't painted. So in the larger scale, they're able to touch up some of those details. And yeah, I just think this ends up being a really awesome figure. Very happy to have him in my classified collection. And yeah, this guy I think is going to be he's going to be a contender when I do my best of the year list. Even though some might argue that this is not a 2022 release, because I know some people did actually receive this figure as far back as December 2021. But I think largely the people that got him in 2021, those were like toy reviewers and stuff. They got sent samples early, but this was always intended to be a 2022 release. And I've had this guy for a couple of weeks now, but I got him even kind of late into 2022 compared to other folks. But again, that's partly because I'm in Canada and everything takes a little bit longer to get to me here. But anyway, he's here now and I love him. So there you go. That's the Alley Viper. So next up, we're going to take a look at the Cobra Bat, which stands for Battle Android Trooper. And these guys were first introduced into the Real American Hero toy line back in 1986. And they were featured in the cartoons and all that sort of stuff and the comic books. This classified figure, it came out around the same time as the Alley Viper. So some people did start receiving him in late 2021, even though he was scheduled as a 2022 release. He came out a couple of months ago. I got mine a few weeks ago at the same time as the Alley Viper. So, but yeah, this is another figure I was really excited about. And yeah, he definitely lives up to the hype. It's a really cool figure. So I'll bring out the original one delicately. Let's see if I can slide. Oh man, I was going to try and slide him into frame in one piece, but nope. You can see his elastic has snapped. But this allows me to bring him up nice and close so you can see what the vintage figure was all about. So the Battle Android Troopers were another type of kind of generic trooper for Cobra. And I think the main reason that they were introduced is so that G.I. Joe had somebody to actually shoot in the show. Because like in the cartoon, and even in the comic books to some degree, they didn't want to be killing people left, right, and center. But G.I. Joe is kind of essentially a war comic book or a war story. So your G.I. Joes look a little incompetent when they can't seem to kill anybody on the Cobra team. So by introducing Battle Android Troopers, it allowed for Cobra to send a big marching army of robots to attack the Joes, and then the Joes could shoot them in the face and blow them up, and it made the Joes finally look like they knew how to fire and aim their weapons. So, but yeah, it's a cool design. Even if it was kind of, a gimmick to bring in robots, I'm glad they did, because, yeah, this is a fan favorite character. Everybody loves the Bat. It's such a cool design with that chrome faceplate. And one thing that was really unique about the Bat is this lenticular sticker. So you can see mine almost looks like it's about to fall off, actually. But that sticker, it kind of has a look of depth and movement a little bit. So it looks like you can see the gears working inside of his chest, which is pretty cool. Another cool feature the Bat had was this removable hand. And he came with 3 extra parts. And you can see his backpack here. He's got these little pegs so you could store them. I seem to be missing my other parts. I'm not sure where they went. But this attachment here, I always refer to it as a flamethrower. I don't know what it actually was. But you can just snap those onto the arms. So there was also a claw. And there's another weapon that I used to refer to as a grenade launcher. Though I couldn't say with certainty what it was actually for. And whichever attachments you're not using, you can just store those in his backpack. So that's the Cobra Bat. Everybody loves the Cobra Bat. So that's the vintage one. We did get some updated versions in the vintage line. But like with almost any character, whether it be Roadblock or the Alley Vipers, they can try and change the design. But everybody loves the originals. The original one is the iconic one. So that look for the Bat is the one everybody thinks about. Now, we did get a bunch of Bats in the modern 3rd generation. So here's a 4-inch Bat. So he has the same look, the same design. See here he has a claw. The claw actually moves, which is cool. Another thing that was kind of cool about him is instead of a sticker, they actually sculpted those same gears that you could see on the sticker, but now they're actually kind of 3D, and you could feel them if you took this faceplate off. So they've actually got some texture to them. But, like, yeah, very cool. So this one here is in the traditional Bat colors. I got all kinds of Bats in weird colors over the years. This one here was called the Inferno Bat, and he's cast in, like, translucent orange. This one here is the Nano Bat. He's gray with some translucent green on him. So I've got all kinds of different varieties of them. And as cool as some of those guys are, you just can't beat the original classic black and yellow. Now, another cool thing that was introduced in the modern era was the idea of giving us battle-damaged Bats. So some of them came with alternate heads. So this guy came, you see I've got him displayed with this, his head is like shot off, so you can see like his little, I guess you'd call it his eye underneath of his faceplate here, and then you can see the whole side of his head is blown out, you can see some gears. And also on the chest plate, you can see it's got some bullet holes in it, and the glass is all fractured. And then these figures would often come with, you know, a good head that wasn't damaged, and also a plate that you could swap out that was nice and clean and undamaged. So, very cool. Anyway, let's focus on the classified Bat. So you can see here he has all of the, all the traditional look of that 1986 Bat. And I think he looks great. If anything, he's he's a little better. If there's one thing I could complain about the original design, is that he was a little, like his head seemed a little round and stuff. And I think they improved that in the modern line. And this one here kind of takes everything that was great about the modern line and then just blows it up a couple extra inches into the 6-inch scale. And yeah, I think it's great. This is an awesome figure of an awesome character. They didn't go nuts trying to add, new bells and whistles. They kept them very traditional, which seems to be kind of what they're doing just in general on the classified line now. I think initially, with all those like gold accents that Roadblock and Duke had and everything, they were trying to distance themselves from the original toys a little bit. But nowadays, that's what they seem to be doing. It's just giving us toys that look like the vintage ones. And yeah, I'm fine with that as well. I know I said earlier that I kind of like them to, not necessarily stick to the original designs, but those vintage designs are the designs I love and grew up with, so I don't really have a problem if they want to just remake them. So, yeah. You see, he comes with a handheld pistol, which I don't think, the vintage one didn't, and some of the modern era ones may have. It almost seems a little silly because he has extra guns. So again, this is the flamethrower and what I would call the grenade launcher, so they can be plugged onto his hand. Even his other little hand, I've got it stored there. There's an extra little clip there. Whereas the vintage backpacks had 3 pegs along the back. Because these attachments are a little larger, there wasn't room for all 3 across the back. But that's very cool that they gave us an extra little peg here so you still can hang the 3rd attachment. But yeah, you see I have him displayed with the claw. And this claw does not move. Like it doesn't open and close like the 4-inch one. But anyway, you can see how that comes off. Just like so. So if I wanted to say put the hand on. There you go. Now you got 2 hands. Very cool. And he does have a little holster there, so if you do want to holster the gun, you can do that. One thing that's interesting to note is so he does have the same kind of gears with that green background with the red and yellow bits, so that carries right over from the vintage figure. If I grab him again right quick, you can see how those gears, they often carry the same shape and color as the vintage sticker did. You know, right up into the kind of more modern era figure. Very similar. But one thing that's interesting with this guy is, so there is no covering for this. I can run my finger over those items. Now, he came with 2 covers. This one here is nice and clean cover, but it's solid black. Now, I don't think I would ever display him like that because I think it really kind of takes all the color out of the figure. Now, mind you, it makes more sense. Like, why would you have a robot on the battlefield with a big glass window on his chest showing all of his inner workings? You know, and make it nice and bright and colorful. It's a target for the Joes to shoot at. So of course, if his most important gears are in the middle of his chest, you would armor it up. So I get it why it's armored. It's more practical, but I don't like it as much. I wish that was a clear plastic. Now I've seen some third-party companies have made clear plastic ones in different colors, so you can get like green translucent and red translucent. I haven't bothered to pull the trigger on them yet, especially because I only have 1 Bat figure in my collection. I'll probably just display him without a covering at all. But if I do decide later to maybe army build these guys, maybe I would buy some of those clear plates of different colors to kind of diversify them. He did come with another black plate that is battle damaged. So again, something they borrowed from the 4-inch line. So you get some battle damage there. But again, I don't think that really helps any. I guess it's nice to have different display options, but I don't like him having those black solid chest shields on anyway. Another thing that he did come with, which is cool though, is the battle damaged head. So again, it's not quite as damaged maybe as the 4-inch one, although you can see the black casing is pulled away from the front all the way to the back. So you see this kind of silver skull underneath. And you've got that glowing blue, like Terminator eye in there. So that's very cool. So if I were to buy 2 of these figures, which I actually did at first, both the Bat and the Alley Viper, I ordered 2 of them from Big Bad Toy Store. And so I was going to keep 2 figures in my collection. And with this guy, I would have displayed one with the damaged head and one without. But I usually give my older brother an opportunity to buy any of these figures off of me if he wants to. Because he is a collector, but he's a little bit... he's not as intense a collector as I am. He kind of like, if he sees them, he buys them, but he doesn't really hunt them down. And unfortunately with the classified figures, they have not become easy to find, even after 2 years or so, and I think the line's been pretty successful. You do have to put in some effort to find these figures. So yeah, when I'm ordering some online, I usually order extras and offer them to my brother, at least when it comes to the trooper types. Anyway, so yeah, I think this guy's awesome. When I reached for all these extra accessories, I noticed I do also have this extra rifle, and I honestly can't remember if this came with him or if it came with the Alley Viper. I'm thinking it might have come with the Alley Viper because it's black, and the Bat's accessories, like his gun, are all silver. So, I don't know. This came with somebody. But I think that's all I have to say about the Bat. Pretty cool. So the next figure we're going to take a look at is Spirit and his Eagle Freedom. So this is a Native American G.I. Joe character who was first introduced in the 1984 line of figures, and he was featured pretty prominently in the cartoon series, so he is a fan favorite. I'll be honest, I had the vintage Spirit figure when I was a kid, and he was not one of my favorites. and I don't really know why. Like, I liked the character okay, but, they can't all be your favorite. But here is the vintage Spirit figure, and I actually like this figure a lot more now than I did as a kid. I don't know, there's a couple of figures that I don't know, they didn't resonate with me as much as a kid, but as an adult, I've come to appreciate them a lot more, and Spirit is one of them. But yeah, really great sculpt on this figure, even back in those early days of '83. And you can see he's still in one piece, so he's not just resting together. So yeah, great figure. He had a cool, unique gun, cool, unique backpack. I think those were all green. I think I colored those with a Sharpie marker when I was a kid. But yeah, so he's all in one piece. Unfortunately, his sidekick, Freedom the Eagle, is not. He had a little clip right there that allowed him to clip onto Spirit's arm, like so. But that clip, I've since broken it, and it's long lost. So at least I still have Freedom, and Freedom can kind of, I don't know, rest on him like so, I suppose. But yeah, he can't clip onto his arm as he's supposed to. In the modern era, like, we did get a couple other versions of Freedom in the vintage line, but again, this is the iconic look. Everybody knows that's the look he had in the cartoons. So when they launched the modern line in 2007, the first Spirit and Freedom that we got had that classic look to it. So you can see this is very clearly based off of the vintage figure with that little red headband, the aqua blue shirt, and that the belt and the gun, everything about it. And you can see this eagle, he actually, instead of a separate clip, his feet just clip onto his arm. And I really like this figure. I thought this was one of the more successful early 4-inch figures. It looked pretty solid. Although there's a couple other figures I wanted to show you from the modern line. I think that they maybe felt Spirit's look was a little too, I don't know, maybe stereotypical, so they wanted to get away from that. So, like, a couple of versions of Spirit took on this look. So you can see he's lost a lot of the, the feathers and things like that seemed a little stereotypical. So, like, this is a cool version of Spirit as well. Like, I like this look for him. But, I love the classic look. What can I say? This is another modern version, which is kind of a mix of both. Like, it's kind of goes back to the original version a little bit more, I think, as far as, like, the way the face is sculpted and everything. It brings back some of those traditional elements, but maybe not as extreme as the original. So anyway, a lot of cool versions of Spirit and Freedom over the years. And this was a character that I was really, really happy to add to the classified line. And I think he's awesome. So I know you can't really see Freedom there, but I think one of the coolest features that Spirit has this time is his backpack actually comes with a perch for Freedom. So I think you can see there he's got little pegs on the bottom of his feet. So now he can rest there, which makes more sense because, Spirit doesn't want to have to hold his arm out all the time to hold his eagle. However, one thing that's cool is you'll notice on his glove, he does have a couple little pegs there, so you can pop Freedom off there and pin him onto the arms as well, which is kind of the more traditional, what we're used to seeing on the vintage figure and pretty much all the other figures that have come since. So very cool. And we will talk about Spirit in a second, but I want to talk about Freedom first. So this is the first time we've got an articulated Freedom. So you can see his head actually moves. Now, I'll leave it up to you. I'm no eagle expert. I don't know if this guy looks like a bald eagle like he's supposed to. When I showed this figure to my wife Vanessa, she's like, why does he have a giant seagull? And I do kind of see a seagull there, but I don't know. Maybe eagles look like seagulls. I don't know. But anyway, his wings, so you can see his wings. You can move them. Before, he was always just like a solid hunk of plastic. So it's nice that you can actually give Freedom some movement. His legs are articulated. Even his feet are articulated. So quite a bit of movement for this figure. But coolest of all is you noticed on all those previous Spirits, all the previous Freedoms I had, the wings are out like this in a gliding position. So even when he was at rest, his wings were out. But this guy here, the wings tuck in at his side. So, he can actually be in a resting position. However, he came with these 2 additional wings. So, you're not forced to just have freedom in a sitting position, even though that's probably how you'll display him most of the time. But you can pop in these flight wings, and now you've got a soaring version of freedom. So that's really cool. And again, the wings are articulated so you can make them flap, whatever you want to do. And it's a pretty big wingspan. So very cool. This is probably, I don't know if it's my favorite thing about this new Spirit figure, but it's definitely up there. And I know I mentioned that Alley Viper is going to be on my year-end list. Spirit definitely will be too. A lot of these figures are going to be, every year when I do my best of the year, ever since this classifying line started, they've had the potential to pretty much dominate the list. Like all these figures that I'm showing you here today, I love them all. I think the Bat is amazing. I really liked the Officer. I thought the Roadblock was really good. And the 2 figures that I'm going to show you after this guy are both pretty awesome as well. So anyway, look at the face sculpt on this guy. I think it looks awesome. I love it. So he's got the braids in there, and he's got the headband and everything. So definitely a throwback to the vintage figure. But, and I don't know, with the old one, the way the braids kind of swept off to the side and everything like that, maybe they were a little bit more stereotypical. This one here, I'd like to think, isn't offensive to anyone. I think Spirit is a cool character as the G.I. Joe tracker. And, I want him to look like, an indigenous person. But, I don't want them to water it down because they're too scared to offend anybody and make him look like just any other normal guy. So I really like this look that they've done for him. I think it's a nice blend of the classic look with some nice updates. You see like the sheath on his knife here. It's got that little frill on there, which I think is a nice little touch. On the knife that is sheathed there, it's got a curved, I don't know if you can, like a bird skull on the end of the knife. Very cool. Anyway, just a great figure. I love this guy. It's very cool. Very happy to have him in the classified line. Anyway, let's move on to the next one. So next up is another Cobra character, but unlike the Bat and the Alley Viper and the Cobra Trooper and the Cobra Officer that I showed you earlier, this guy is a unique character. So Cobra did have all kinds of trooper types that allowed kids to buy the same figure multiple times and build little squads, but then they also did have a nice cast of weird characters that were just unique individuals. Characters like Raptor and Crystal Ball and, Destro and the Baroness and Zartan, lots of just kind of weirdos. And Croc Master was a great weirdo that was introduced in 1987. And because, that's arguably kind of late into the line, 5 years in, that he's not a character that that everybody's mind jumps to when you say G.I. Joe. I think there were a lot of kids that collected it for the first 2 or 3 years and then got out of it as it started getting weirder and weirder. So I'm kind of surprised that Hasbro would go for Croc Master so early on in the classified line. He's another one of those characters that I just think, wow, I would have thought we would have maybe got him, a few years into the line if it was still going. But I think it's awesome that we have him already because he's a great looking character. He was the Cobra Crocodile Wrangler, of course. So in the comic books and the cartoons, I believe, there was the Cobra headquarters. It did move around from time to time. Sometimes they had a castle in the mountains or whatever, but some depictions, the Cobra headquarters was in a swamp, and it was surrounded by crocodiles and stuff, and Croc Master was in that swamp, kind of leading the crocodiles, making sure that no trespassers came along and all that stuff. So yeah, very cool design. Now I've got the original Croc Master right here. He isn't... They fall apart before you have a chance to tell you that. I was going to say he is broken, and as you can see, he's very broken. But great figure. You see he's got these crocodile skin boots. That textured crocodile skin there. And the belt, he's got this crocodile eye as a belt buckle, which is very cool. And then he has this crocodile skin tank top. Like, how badass is that? And then a crocodile skin bracelet on there, too. And then he's got this weird breathing tube that plugs into his mask, because I guess that's he's, diving into the swamp water and all that sort of stuff. And I don't know if he has the all this crocodile skin on him as a show of dominance over the crocodiles, or maybe it's just to blend in so they think he's part of the gang. But anyway, he was just a cool character. I really like this guy. And the original figure, he came with a crocodile, because of course you'd have to. So here is the original crocodile that Croc Master came with. So like all the animals in the vintage line, like Freedom, the eagle I just showed you, they were just a solid piece of plastic. Like Timber the wolf, Junkyard the dog, they were just solid hunks of plastic with no paint apps. Like this guy's, even his eyes or his teeth, they're not painted. So you've just got this solid green Croc. Now size-wise, like this might not look very menacing, but when you consider the size of the figure itself, so this guy here, let's just say he's 6 feet tall. This Croc, you know, he's like a, I don't know, 7, 8 foot Croc, I guess. So that's a pretty good sized Croc. Nothing you'd want to run into in the swamp. But it still doesn't look very menacing. But, you know, you can't really package a gigantic crocodile with your Croc Master. It's basically just a free add-in accessory. Like this Croc Master was no more expensive than any other figure. So I think that's a pretty good size Croc that he came with. Now in the modern line, this was the 4-inch Croc Master that came out in the kind of the 25th anniversary line of G.I. Joe. So you can see he's got all those same design elements. He's got the big breather tube, the crocodile skin boots, the crocodile tank top, all that jazz. And he also came with a crocodile. Now you notice he's got the crocodile on a spiked collar and a leash. The vintage one actually came with one too. I forgot to show you it. So yeah, he had a spiked leash for his Croc as well. But this crocodile is much cooler in that he's actually got an articulated jaw, and he's got, you know, paint apps. He's got that pink inside the mouth, the white teeth, the black eyes. So it feels much more like a, you know, like a character in and of itself. Now size-wise, this crocodile is even probably less intimidating because it's only about as tall as the figure. So it would still be, I guess, a 6 foot Croc, but just the girthiness of him. Both these Crocs, they seem a little small. So like they seem like baby crocodiles almost. So, you know, that's fine. Again, it's just a free accessory with your figure, so I wouldn't expect them to go nuts. So anyway, not only is this Croc Master a fantastic figure who comes with some really cool accessories. So he comes with a whip, which all Croc Master figures have come with a whip, so that's pretty standard. And you see the head sculpt is great on this guy. He's got that breathing tube that comes back into this, like, I guess, oxygen canister on his back. He's got a pistol that's holstered there. I love this accessory, this big meat hook thing. Now I don't know if he uses that to kind of drag crocodiles, or if he just thrusts that into somebody's back like Leatherface style or something. But it's just a very, you know, scary weapon. I wouldn't not want to run into this guy. He's also got a knife sheathed on his ankle there. But yeah, just great sculpting in this guy. Like, I love that crocodile skin. The eye, you get a lot more detail on that belt buckle this time around. Just very cool stuff. This guy is definitely not just a contender for my best of the year list, but of all these figures I'm showing you today, this guy is a definite on my top 10. I don't know where he'll rank exactly, but I love it. And so yeah, the point I was about to make is, so not only is he really cool just in and of itself, but of course he has to come with a crocodile. And so we have this little baby Croc, and even this little Croc here, he's got paint apps. So compared to that vintage one, which was this big and no paint apps, this guy here, just this little teeny guy. But even still, they painted his belly, they painted his teeth white, they painted his eyes yellow and black. So a lot of detail on this little teeny guy. And he's super cute. And you also get this little bonus albino alligator, again with paint apps. Even though the figure itself is white, they still painted his teeth white, and he's got those yellow, kind of reddish eyes. Again, adorable. So those are great little accessories. And then this figure, Croc Master, was packaged as a deluxe figure, similar to the first Baroness figure that came with a motorcycle, or breaker that came with the Ram motorcycle. So you're paying a little bit extra for this guy because he comes with a pretty sweet accessory in that he comes with a fully articulated Crocodile, and this thing is quite literally a beast. This thing is huge and it is awesome. Like, look at the size of this figure. You know, when we in past Croc Masters, we said, okay, they're about as tall as the figure. This guy, he's easily twice as big as the figure. So we're talking about like a 12-foot Crocodile. Now that is seriously menacing. Like, if you were playing with these figures and you had Croc Master guarding the Cobra headquarters and the Joes ran into this thing, this is the kind of thing that you think could kill one of the Joes. It could take them down. Not like, you know, these wimpy little things that we had in the past. Those things might bite your ankles and be a nuisance, but this thing here will bite you in half. And I love it. Like, the sculpt and detail on this guy is just awesome. And of course, the mouth does open nice and wide. You get sculpted detail inside of the mouth. And, you know, the other one, it had an articulated jaw, but this one not only does it have the jaw, but it's articulated here at the head, so you can move the head around, the arms, and the feet, so you can move them all around nice. And then there's a joint there, so you can kind of spin like that. You want to do the little death roll, and then you've got the back legs and the back feet are articulated, and then the tail. Not only is it got a nice kind of ball joint there, so you can move it around a lot, but it's also wired, so you can pose that. It's like a soft rubber with a wire inside, so it kind of holds its pose as you move it around. So very cool. Like, that's just an awesome set. Great figure, great Crocodile. The little babies are just like an extra little bonus. Awesome. This is definitely one of the highlights of the classified line for me thus far. So next up, we've got Storm Shadow. Now, I know a minute ago I said I only had 2 more figures to show you, which would have been Croc Master and Storm Shadow, but I forgot I do actually have another figure I do want to show you after this one, but I'll try and make it quick, as I like to try and keep these videos as close to an hour as possible. But anyway, so here is Storm Shadow, the Cobra Ninja, and this is a figure that people have been waiting for ever since this classified line first came out, because, you know, as I said, getting characters like Croc Master and the Alley Viper are kind of surprises that we're getting them this early in the line. But Storm Shadow, it's a bit of a surprise that we got him this late, because even though he wasn't introduced in the first couple of years of the original G.I. Joe toy line, he's become kind of one of the top 5 like faces of the brand, I feel. And that's in part because his arch enemy Snake Eyes is the main face of the brand. So every time Snake Eyes is featured in a movie or a cartoon and he plays a pretty big role, then Storm Shadow always plays a pretty big role opposite of him. So, yeah, it seems kind of crazy that it took them this long to get us a Storm Shadow. And, yeah, it's a great figure. I'm happy to have him. Now, I should mention that this isn't the first Storm Shadow we've got. So they did give us a Storm Shadow earlier. But, you know, this is the classic look of Storm Shadow. I've said it a couple times in this video already. People generally associate these G.I. Joe characters with their original iconic look. Most of the key characters all had like second and third and fourth versions. Some of them had, like, you know, outer space outfits and stuff. But people don't think of outer space Duke when they think of Duke. You know, they think of him in his classic tan shirt and green pants. And this is the version of Storm Shadow that people think of, even though there were multiple versions of Storm Shadow. Now, Storm Shadow is one of those few characters that possibly his version 2 is almost as iconic as his version 1 look. And that's partly because this version 1 look, which is how he was featured in all of the comic books and cartoons and how he was introduced and he played such a prominent role in the storyline, is because this is when they introduced him as the bad Cobra Ninja. But later, we found out that he was brainwashed by Cobra and he became a good guy and he joined G.I. Joe. And when he joined G.I. Joe, he took on a different outfit with kind of a hood and some camo. And so that look became pretty iconic as well. But anyway, the first figure they gave us in the classified line was based on his version 3, which is this look. So we've had this figure for a while, and you see it's mostly black with some white on it. And I think that's probably why this look has never really stuck for Storm Shadow because you've got him and Snake Eyes kind of at opposite ends of the spectrum. Snake Eyes, of course, is always wearing all black, so you really need Storm Shadow in all white for it to really be effective. So I thought it was weird that they ever gave Storm Shadow such a strong, like, black outfit. But anyway, so this is the first version of Storm Shadow we got in the classified line, and even this was an Amazon exclusive, and it wasn't super easy to track down. I remember I had to pay quite a bit for him on the secondary market in order to obtain a Snake Eyes, or a Storm Shadow, sorry. And I was kind of wondering, like, should I even bother? Because I know they're going to make a more traditional Storm Shadow down the road, and sure enough, they did. But even before we got this one, we did get a kind of a subset of figures based on the live-action Snake Eyes movie that came out a year or two ago. So here is Storm Shadow from the movie. Now, he actually came with masked and unmasked heads. I choose to display him with the unmasked head just because I feel it differentiates him a little bit from the other figures on the shelf. But this wasn't a great figure either. Like, sure, you could sort of say it's a little bit more traditional than this one because at least he's wearing the all-white. If you want to call this white, it's really more of like a cream. Like, it looks like a figure that's yellowed over 20 years or something. The movie wasn't very good. The character designs weren't very good. So, of course I bought it. But this is the Storm Shadow I've been waiting for. This is the one that is supposed to be modeled after the vintage figure that came out in 1984, I believe it was. Now, this guy here, he's yellowed so much over time, he almost looks like he matches this guy. But this guy was a nice stark white originally, kind of like his wristbands. They haven't yellowed, but that's how the color of his whole outfit. Same as there, you can kind of see the joint, how white he is. So it's a shame that he's gotten this yellow. But you can see the all-white outfit, the black sash with the kind of throwing stars tucked in there, the Cobra logo. Very kind of classic ninja. Now, we got a lot of versions of him over the years, but I did pull out one from the modern era that is probably the most classic looking. So again, white outfit, bare arms, red Cobra logo, just one strap across his chest. This is the classic Storm Shadow that everybody wants, that everybody loves. And now we finally have him. And yeah, he's really cool. My excitement for this figure is a little bit diminished because even before I ordered this one a while ago and I've been waiting for him to arrive. But a couple of days before this one arrived in the mail, they actually put up a pre-order for what they call the retro Storm Shadow. So this guy came in the kind of standard classified box. But now what they're doing is they're taking some of the figures they've already released and they're re-releasing them with new paint jobs on a vintage blister card like the old 3 3/4 inch figures were released. And so the new Storm Shadow that I just pre-ordered on the blister card is basically the same as this one, but he's actually even more true to this design. I think the biggest change I noticed was instead of having these kind of gauntlets on his wrist and the gloves, is he has bare hands and he has just wrappings around his wrist. So yeah, even more classic than this one. So it's going to be a while before I get that. That was just a pre-order. It's like several months away. But I think when I do eventually get that Storm Shadow, it will be very similar to this one, just slightly better. So knowing that I've got the same figure, just slightly improved already coming, it does, it brings my excitement levels down a little bit on this figure here. But before I knew I was going to be getting that retro carded one, I was quite excited to get this classic Storm Shadow because he's got all those classic iconic elements. He's got the, just the one black strap. He's got the throwing stars in there. He's got the Cobra logo on his chest there. Just a traditional ninja. No bells and whistles on this guy. Just a classic Storm Shadow, and he looks awesome. You'll notice here he's got this kind of floating like hood that's folded back. I'll probably leave it on him, although it's a little annoying the way it kind of floats around like that. But you could just remove that if you pop his head off. I'm sure that would come right off. But the reason they give that to you is because they also give you a hood. So you can pop his head off and put the hood on. So knowing that he's supposed to have a hood with this outfit, I guess if he pulls his hood back, you'd want to have it resting there. I suppose I should maybe show you what that looks like. I haven't taken his head off yet, so I want to be careful I don't hurt him in any sort of way. Alright, so that comes off. Hood goes on like so. Alright, so I guess there he is with the hood on. So I don't think it looks bad, but it's just not classic enough for me. The vintage figure didn't have a hood. You know, there wasn't even like a indication that there was a hood. So yeah, I don't really know why they gave him a hood here, but whatever. For accessories, he came with this bow. Now, I imagine when I see this little knob on his backpack, I think it could probably attach to this so you can store the bow on there. I haven't quite figured out how to do it. You see he's also got these arrows in his quiver. There is one separate arrow that just kind of camouflages in there. So you can just put that in there. So that's pretty cool, I guess, if you want to pose him, you know, about ready to shoot an arrow. He also has two swords, so they can be sheathed in there as well. He's got the two sheaths just kind of tucked on the back. So that's pretty cool. So, a solid figure. I'm pretty pleased with him. I don't know if I put his head quite right, but anyway, cool figure. Like this guy a lot. So the last figure I want to talk about today that I almost forgot to show you is the Baroness. So the Baroness, she's a great character. I've always loved this character. I think of the entire G.I. Joe vintage line, I think it's maybe one of the best figures from the line. Here is the original 1983 or 84 Baroness. And I just think she looks great. Because a lot of the female characters, I don't think they translated very well to plastic. The characters might have been attractive in the cartoon and the comic books, but yeah, they looked a little manly when it came to the action figures. But I think Baroness is actually probably the most successful female character they had in the vintage line. And just a great look, you know, classic all black suit with the red Cobra emblem there. It's a very striking look. Anyway, so this was a character I was excited to get in the classified line. However, I was kind of pissed when not only was she a Target exclusive, but she came with this bike. And this bike is not even something from classic G.I. Joe lore or something. Like when I had to buy Breaker and I had to buy the Ram motorcycle to get my Breaker, I didn't mind so much. Even though I don't really care about vehicles, the Ram motorcycle is a classic G.I. Joe vehicle from the 80s. This is just some random sports bike. I can't even imagine Baroness really riding around on it. It's not like a bad toy, but it did add about $50 to the cost of this figure. And, you know, I currently have it on display with my G.I. Joe classified figures, but as I run out of room, as I buy more figures, that's going to end up in a bin somewhere. So yeah, I wasn't thrilled with having to pay $50 for it, essentially. But anyway, I love this Baroness figure. So if I had to buy a big stupid bike to get her, I would do it. Because I think it's fantastic. I think she looks great. I love the paint on her face, like her eyes look really nice. I love the glasses with the translucent lenses. The outfit here, it's a nice update. Like you can see how it's primarily black with some gray throughout, and then it's got multiple red Cobra logos. She's got some gold accents on her pistols, which are holstered here, and on her knife that's sheathed there. She also has this big weird robotic snake accessory that I just keep coiled around her arm. So yeah, very cool figure. This Baroness made my best of list last year. I can't remember where I ranked her, but she was very high up. We did get another Baroness figure. So like Storm Shadow, this one is based on the live action movie. I actually didn't mind the look of Baroness from the movie, but again, that movie was just kind of a stinker, so it's kind of hard to get excited about these figures. I've also seen some people point out how this figure has a very long neck. I didn't really feel that way about it, but kind of once it's pointed out to you, I kind of notice it more. So I think both of these are pretty good Baroness figures, but anyway, I was mentioning a second ago about the G.I. Joe Retro line on the retro cards. So I believe they are Walmart exclusives. And the other day I posted a picture on Instagram and I said I bought this exclusive figure. And yeah, one of my Instagram buddies messaged me and said, hey, you know what? I actually saw one of those exclusive Joe retro figures at Walmart the other day. So I drove to Walmart based on his tip, and I found the Baroness at my local Walmart. Now, let me get these guys out of the way here. I'm debating on whether I'm going to open this figure up or not. I'm generally not a carded collector. I usually open things up, but when it comes to something like this, where I already have basically this figure open here, I don't know if I need to open this one up. I apologize for the glare from my lights here. We'll take a better look at her in a second. So the fact that this is on a retro card, that's kind of half of the novelty of it. So I kind of just want to keep it carded and pin it up on my wall as a display piece. So it's kind of a bummer that since this is one of the few figures I might do that with, that the card was so busted up. You can see a very a good sized crease right across the top there. It's a pretty ugly fold there. So normally I wouldn't care about that so much because I open my toys, and even if I save the packaging, and I definitely will, if I open this up, I'll save this packaging, but I'll cut the bubble off and I'll store it. I don't really care that it's not in great condition. But if this is something I decide to pin to my wall, it will kind of suck that it's got a big crease in there. Anyway, the cards, by the way, they're pretty flimsy. So that's not so much it is absolutely Hasbro's fault. Walmart probably could have handled this thing better, but if this were a sturdier card, it probably wouldn't have bent so easily. But yeah, this is way too flimsy. So I'm disappointed in Hasbro because they know these are obviously geared towards collectors, these retro carded figures. Also, I want to mention about the packaging. So there's some nice artwork on there with the Baroness, and it harkens back to the original packaging from the 80s, but it's not the same artwork. That's a different image than what we got on the vintage packaging. So it's nice artwork. Anyway, let's talk about the figure. So they packaged her without her glasses on, which I think is kind of odd because you can see there's holes on the side of her head where those glasses plug in. So you almost can't display this figure without her glasses because otherwise she's going to have two holes on the side of her head. So you got to put the glasses on her. So I don't know why they didn't just display her that way. But anyway, I think this figure looks really nice and possibly better than the one I already have. It's a little hard to tell because with the other figure I was only looking at her with her glasses on. But I think the eye makeup on this version might be even nicer. The other major changes on this figure is you'll notice she's all black. It's still some different shades of black. There's kind of a glossy black over more of a matte black. But there's none of that gray that we saw on the other figure. And also there's the big bright red Cobra emblem just like the vintage 80s figure. But they got rid of some of those other accents. So she doesn't have a red Cobra emblem. The emblem's there, but it's not painted red. She doesn't have, she still has the two, let's see. Does she have the pistols? Because she's got the two holsters, yeah. So sorry, there's the two pistols up there. So they'll be holstered on her back, sort of like this Baroness has, but those gold guns really kind of stand out. This figure, they won't do that because they're black. All of her other accessories are black weapons. She doesn't have, the robot snake. Another thing that's interesting, you'll notice she has a display base here. So it looks like a display base, kind of like we see on the modern era figures, the 4-inch figures, which is nice. I wish classified figures had come with bases all along. But anyway, at least if they start giving it to us now, that'd be appreciated. So yeah, it's hard to say without me opening her up whether this figure is essential, whether it's better. Especially this figure already cost me $80 with the motorcycle and everything. Did I really need to go out and drop another $35 on this one? It's hard to say. I think I just got caught up in the moment because, the guy messaged me on Instagram and said they had one there, so I kind of darted out to grab it without even really thinking if I needed it or not. $30 didn't really break the bank. The card, nice, and but yeah, before I decide if I take the figure out, I don't know. I think I might have to watch some other reviews myself to just determine whether the figure itself is nice enough and enough of an improvement that I feel the need to open her up and add her to my collection. Just here I can see that the skin tone looks pretty different. The Baroness that I have open looks pretty pale compared to this one here. The glasses, they have that gold on the glasses on this one here, which you could argue kind of maybe detracts from the figure because Baroness doesn't necessarily seem the type that would have little gold cat-eyed glasses. So I think the solid black glasses on this one are an improvement as well. I don't know. It's hard to say whether I'll open her or not, but anyway, it's a cool figure. I like this figure a whole lot, so I don't mind owning it twice, even if the differences are, negligible. It's a really solid figure regardless. So anyway, I think I should probably wrap this up. So yeah, let's say our goodbyes here. So that was my review of my latest G.I. Joe classified figures. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please make sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave me some comments below. It's always very much appreciated. So as always, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time. Ciao.